Well, I'm also really glad that you joined me for this particular presentation because for me and my team, this is like central to all of your success in the college process. If you can spend some time being intentional about this part of the process, everything else is going to fall into place. This really unlocks everything else. So I'm super excited about doing this today with all of you. All right, so let's dive into how to build a college list. Um, Now, I like to start with a little bit of context, like what actually matters here and why does this college list play such a big role in my mind? So, from the student's perspective, these are the things that they can do that a college will value: have good grades, have positive character traits. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Write good essays that demonstrate, who they are and what their values are and some aspect of their personal growth. If a college is requiring or looking at test scores, they want to have good test scores, and they want to demonstrate leadership, and that can be demonstrated in all sorts of different ways. And from a college perspective, what they're really looking at are several different kinds of fit. And the one you probably have never heard of or thought of is institutional priority fit. What the heck does that mean? We will talk about it. But I will tell you that's probably the biggest filter that they use. It may not be the first filter that they use, but it is a big factor in how they make decisions. So we'll talk about that today. They're looking at academic fit. They want to know that a student can succeed in their school. They're not going to be overwhelmed by the rigor or the workload. They are sort of on par with their peers. They're not going to feel, like they're way smarter than everybody or much harder working than everybody or the opposite. They want to make sure there's that academic fit. And they are looking for a cultural fit, that the values of the college match the values of the student, that student is going to be an active, engaged member of their student body, likes doing the kinds of things that are available to students on that campus. And then the financial fit. Not every college cares about this. Some colleges are far wealthier than others and can afford to not care about financial fit, but they do care. They want to know if your student is going to be a full pay student, if they're going to need to attract that student with some merit aid, or if they're going to have to extend some financial aid to the student. So not every college cares about this, but some really do. So it's worth you knowing about this, that this could be a factor in whether your student gets in or not. Now, a lot of these things is fairly easy to map, right? Grades and test scores, that is an indicator of academic fit, right? It's not the most perfect indicator, but it's an indicator. Character and essays and leadership say something about the cultural fit for the student. But what the heck do they use to gauge institutional priority fit or a financial fit? Right? So I'm going to spend a little time talking about that because these are the things that are really important for you to prioritize in your college list building. And I'll explain why. So institutional priorities broadly are just goals that the institution has, right? And if you think about a college like a business, they've got a 5-year plan, just like we all have for our businesses. And they break that down into this year, we're going to expand in this area, or we're going to grow this department. We're going to have a winning team over here because that increases alumni donations and our reputation in the world. They may have certain legacy preferences, tuition needs. They need a certain percentage of full pay students to offset the students that they're going to offer merit aid to. They may be looking for certain talents or interests. So I mentioned maybe they're trying to build out a certain department that they've just started. Or you hear this all the time, the orchestra lost all of its bassoon players because they all graduated. So now we need people who play the bassoon, right? And that is a really great example of an institutional priority. Has almost nothing to do with academics or culture, but it is something that is going to be selected for in the process. And there may be other growth goals. So I don't want to go too in the weeds here, but colleges do make plans to climb the rankings because we in this business all know that rankings don't really mean anything, but colleges know that parents look at rankings. And it matters a lot to parents, whether those rankings are valid or not. And so they know the formula that causes their rankings to go up, and they are going to prioritize admitting based on those aspects that they want to change in that formula. So Northeastern University is a great example of this. Back when I was applying to college, Northeastern was basically a safety school for most kids in the Boston area. And now it is one of the most selective universities in the country. And the president who came in, about 10 years ago or whatever, had a goal. They were going to move up into the top 100 in the rankings. And they were, very focused on meeting this goal. And the way they met that goal was by changing who they admitted. So let that sink in for a minute. These priorities do change every year. There are general trends. Like I said, there's usually like a 5-year plan. They don't make that public to families, but there are places you can look, and we'll talk through that, where you can get a sense of what those institutional priorities are. But getting overly focused on any one priority in any one year is misdirection, because that priority has changed by the next year, right? So the thing you need to do is really understand, in the year that your student is applying, what are the priorities? And if your student is a fit for those priorities, well, that school is probably a good fit for them if they meet some of the other criteria. So what this means for you is, no matter how smart your student is, they have a perfect score on the SAT, the most amazing GPA, they started their own nonprofit, they've done all of these amazing things and worked so hard. If they are not an institutional priority, they are not getting it, right? When we talk about the most selective schools in the country, they can fill their classes 5, 10, 15 times over with valedictorians and perfect scores, right? That's sort of the first bar you have to clear, is the academic fit. But really, to get selected, it's about the institutional fit. And this can really make it feel like, well, what's the point, right? I'm sure you've heard stories of students who have really high test scores and GPAs and have all these amazing accomplishments, and they still didn't get in to, Harvard or Stanford or wherever it may be. And you start to feel like it's never enough, right? We can't possibly understand, how is it possible that they expect students to all perform at this level? And if that kid didn't get in, what chance does my kid have? And kids are feeling this too. And a lot of them are starting to disengage. They're saying, well, this kid killed themselves to get in here, right? They gave up all of their social life. They had no friends. Everything they did was about their college strategy, and they still didn't get in. It didn't pay off. So I don't want to do that. Right? I don't know how many of you have kids who, when you start talking to them about college, they're like, I'm not going to do that. Right? I'm going to be who I am, and that's it. I'm seeing that a lot these days. But if you know that the college is selecting for institutional priorities, you can optimize for academic performance and extracurriculars and all of that stuff. If you add in some understanding of institutional priorities, you have an opportunity to take back some control here, right? Think about it like product market fit, right? You're not going to try to sell a product into a market that does not want that product, right? And I know this is a little crude. We don't want to think about our kids as being products, and we're not selling them, right? But this is a good analogy, right? You want to think about, where is the market for this product that we have? And trying to understand those institutional priorities will help you understand that. So you target colleges that actively want your student. That's where you find not only the most success in terms of getting in, but the most success in terms of what comes next, right? Getting into college is just the start of all of this. They've got to go to college and have an amazing experience and graduate, and then go on to whatever's next for them, right? And if you're selecting colleges based on that fit, you have the best chance of your student not only getting in, but thriving there and being well prepared for their next step. Right? So I want you to kind of step back a little, because the focus right now for your kids in high school is like getting in, but we want to think about getting through, right? And getting to what's next. So building your college list in this way with an idea of product market fit is going to unlock everything, right? Not only those two big things that I just told you, but also the logistics of applying. It's going to help you not only decide where to apply, it's going to help you understand what stories to tell in your essays, what aspects, actually, I think this is my next slide. actually, it's the slide after this. Let me back up. It's going to unlock the whole process. But in order to do this, you have to turn inwards a little bit, right? You have to say, okay, I understand. There are all these colleges out there. I understand. It's very hard to get into. I understand. All of my peers are going crazy trying to figure out how to do this, right? I need to step back and think about my own needs first, right? So you need your student, and I know this is hard with teenagers. It's probably the sole reason my business exists, because parents can't do this with their own kids. You need your student, your teenager, to understand their values, their goals for their education and life. What kind of learning preferences do they have? What are their needs? Are there certain supports that they need? Do they need to learn in a certain way? What are their fears? And then you solve for each of those things, right? Basically, with them listing these things out and understanding them deeply about themselves, you're creating a definition of success, right? A college that can solve for all of these things, that's our dream college. Not the highest ranked, not the one with the prettiest campus or the best looking students or best food. I always think that's funny. Kids really love that. They're like, oh, the food is so good there. Like, that's not why you go to a college. But it's all of these things, right? And I have two tools that I will share with you. I'll put them in the chat. We'll kind of talk through them in a minute, that can help you start this conversation. But again, it is very hard for parents to do this with their kids. Let me pause my share and get the right files up for you. Oh my goodness. My computer is not cooperating. Okay. Here is my personal college inventory. I will share this file with you all. So it's just a worksheet, bunch of check boxes. You can't see it?
Nope.
Oh, thank you. How about this?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. So it's just a worksheet. I think it's 4 or 5 pages long. And it takes them through from a very broad perspective, like what area of the country you want to be in, what do you want the weather to be like, helps them just sort of think through some of these things. And then you can take this into a search engine, and I'll tell you some of the best ones for it, and plug in their preferences, and you'll get a very long list of schools, but it will still be narrower than, the 4,000 schools that there are in the United States. And there are some descriptions of example colleges, or what a college town looks like, or what you might want to think about when it comes to the size of a school. We have types of college. We get into atmosphere and academics, activities they might want to be a part of, and then whether financial aid is an important factor. And they'll go back and rank this. And then you could, like I said, put it into a search engine. The other thing I love to do with my students, tell me if you can see this one. Yes? Okay, great. This one is a college research kind of tracker. And I'm a big fan of spreadsheets. Anyone who works with me knows this. Basically, the first thing you want to do is have them fill in over here, this row 2, with their GPA, their test scores, their ideal size, their ideal setting, whether it's a town or a big city or whatever it is, things they like about their favorite teachers, things they like to do outside of school, experiences or skills that they might want to build, their preferred learning environment, things that they don't like, right? And maybe you do that other worksheet first, and then you transfer it over here, but you can fill in their stats and other information, and then it becomes kind of like a guiding light for you. You don't have to go find it anywhere else. It's all right here. And as you get that list of schools, you pop them in over here. And here you're going to need to get some data from an outside source, either that school's website or a college search engine. And I've got them linked here in the resources tab. These are the ones that we use. We love them. There are a lot more than this, but these are really good ones, easy to use. So populate all of that. And as you're doing it, compare. Okay, my GPA is a 3.0 and the average GPA at whatever school is a 4.0. Does that feel like a fit for me? Am I going to be stretching? Am I comfortable stretching that much? Right. And then matching up based on research on the school's website What are their majors that they offer that might be a fit for the career that I want to pursue? Or if my academic interests vary from computer science to sociology to whatever, let me look at some course listings and see if there are courses that stand out to me. Same thing, look at a departmental page for a major you like and look through the profiles of the faculty and see what are they researching? What do they teach? Do they seem interesting, like a person I would like to learn from? And then same with extracurriculars, study abroad, lab research opportunities, internships, whatever it may be, that fits this sort of category of things that they want out of their college career. And that way their needs and goals stay centered. And it's not just, I have to turn myself into somebody that Princeton wants. It's more, Princeton doesn't offer what I want, right? So it's much more empowering to a student and a family. And then you can take this, once you go through it, I encourage my students to rate the school, like how happy would you be to go there based on this, on a scale of 1 to 10, and then you just sort it. And I usually take the top 20 and I say, okay, we're going to do a deeper dive into these. And I also encourage them to take those top 20 schools and drop them into the essay section, because on your college application, you're going to have a main essay, and then most colleges have these supplemental essays that are shorter, much more specific to each college. They change from year to year. So, wait until you have a pretty finalized list, but then this becomes an organizer. And as you start to do this, you'll see a lot of the questions are similar. You'll have to tailor them to each school, but where does your interest in economics come from? You're going to have a similar answer for that, no matter which school you're applying to, right? So you'll be able to see at a glance where I could reuse some material. It becomes a strategic organizer, right? So that's sort of one example of how doing the list this way unlocks the rest of the process, right? Let me pause for questions. Or anybody has any questions about these tools? No? Okay.
This is great.
I love them.
Yeah,
Great.
thanks for sharing. For the essay prompts, like
Yeah.
how soon, like do the essays change every year, or how soon can we get to the list?
So the
this
Common
could
App,
be yeah.
the Common App essay, the main essay platform or main college application platform, they release their essay prompts every March. So they have already confirmed what the prompts for this year's juniors, who will be seniors next year. We know what those are. Those actually haven't changed in the last 5 years. I don't expect them to change in the next couple, but you always want to make sure. This last summer, we had a big change in a lot of the supplemental essay questions because of the Supreme Court decision. Many colleges responded to that by explicitly asking students to talk about their identity or some aspect of diversity or something like that. So there was a big change in those questions, but for the most part, they're pretty stable. And as I said, they tend to ask the same 6 questions, right? Tell us about a meaningful extracurricular. What does diversity mean to you? What are your academic interests and where did they come from? What is a community that you are proud to be a part of? So your student can start writing those kinds of essays. And then once the prompts are confirmed over the summer, they can tailor them to each school. That's a good question though. Anybody else a question on this? No. Okay. I'm going to go back to my slides and I'll email you these links. So you'll have them. And as I mentioned, you kind of want to start broad. Once you get their preferences, start really broad. The goal, I think, at that level of college list building is the school worthy of more research? Is it worth visiting this school? Do I like it enough to take the next step? Think of it, first date. Okay. We're just getting to know each other. Do I feel like I want to invest more time to get to know you better? Right. On first glance, they may be able to say no to some schools. And it's just as important to know why they're saying no as it is to understand why they're saying yes. So there's a spot on that spreadsheet to track dislikes, because then you can save yourself the time researching another school that has exactly that thing that they don't like, right? But there are search engines that will help you build this broad list and then go into the website and get them to try to imagine their day-to-day existence there. All of these college websites are full of marketing and beautiful imagery, and every kid is like, oh my God, I would love to go to Yale. Of course, right? But not everybody can go to Yale. And just because the images on the website or the descriptions on the website are really wonderful doesn't mean that's what your day-to-day existence is going to be. Right. So really try to get them to see past that marketing and think about the day to day. And this is where talking to actual people can be really helpful, right? It could be their high school guidance counselor. It could be a family friend who went to that school. Maybe they don't know anybody, but you can get in touch with the admissions office to say, I would like to talk to a student, and they will put you in touch with a student. Right. And then track everything that they learn, pictures that you take on visits, like any little thing that they seem excited about, make sure you're getting them to write it down somewhere, right? Or things that they're not excited about. And then here's how you look for those institutional priorities, right? You want to read the mission statement. I'll give you an example of this in a future slide. You want to analyze the marketing. A lot of students I have, I had a student actually, this just happened like a month ago. I thought Tufts would be a really good fit for her. And she looked at the website, and apparently the website had a carousel of images of things happening on campus. And more than one of them was some sort of science lab. And she's like, oh, they only do science at that school. Which of course they don't. They are trying to create the reputation that they do a lot of science at that school, because most people actually dismiss Tufts because they think it's a liberal arts college. I can't do science there. Right. So you're going to have to kind of explain how this marketing works. It may not be a picture of the current state of the college, but it certainly is a picture of the college they want to create. Right. So that marketing can help them understand what kind of students are they trying to attract, and am I that student? If you are, great. If you're not, well, maybe that's not one of their priorities. Doesn't mean you can't get in, but it may not be the thing they're really driving right now. You can also look at the news feeds for a department that they're interested in, because maybe they just hired like 5 new professors in this area, or they just built this great new lab. They won these grants. That means there's an investment there. Wherever they're investing, they've got to attract students, right? They are investing to attract students. So it can tell you, where is this university going? Right. I did my PhD at Indiana University, and they had bought first edition Cynthia Plath collection. Right. And now if you want to study Sylvia Plath, you have to go to Bloomington, Indiana. Right. They make investments to attract people. So see what they're investing in. And then I'll pause in a second, get to your question, Marjana. But you should also look at the prior year's common data set. Now, common data set is a bit wonky. It's certainly not user-friendly. But if you Google the name of any college and common data set, you will find a page on their website that tells you a lot about the college. It contains information about who's enrolled, gender specifics, demographic specifics. It tells you about who's applying and who got in, what percentage of them submitted SAT or ACT scores, and what percentage did not. It can tell you generally what kind of fields their students are interested in. So what's popular at the school, what's not popular at this school. It is a wealth of information. The government mandates that colleges report this. There is a government database of this, but it is not user friendly. So I usually just tell people, go to the school website, and you'll be surprised. You're going to get a Word document or a Google spreadsheet that you will just be able to like scroll through and see all this information. But it will even tell you how many transfers applied and how many got in. Right. So this is where the data for all those search engines come from. So it's a really, really valuable source, and you should definitely look at that. Marjana, what's your question?
Hey, Sheila. Thanks for pausing.
Yeah.
As you were talking about, the marketing materials, like really clever way to think about it, right? But when universities invest in, let's say, a new chemistry lab, or they hire new organic chemists, I mean, is that more sort of graduate level based? Because your undergraduates are not necessarily, participating and doing organic chemistry research. They may be doing a rotation or something, but that's not really, I think, what they're doing in their undergraduates. So like, how do you kind of thread that
Good point.
needle?
Yeah, that is a great point. That's certainly true. that, you know, a lot of those professors are going to be more focused on their research or teaching graduate students. Depends on the institution. But at the same time, the undergrad is the moneymaker. I mean, grad students bring in money through grants, but undergrads make money through tuition.
So,
right?
sorry,
So
then follow-on question, is it more advantageous, or how would you think about sending your kid out of state, right? Because they're going to now pay out-of-state tuition
yeah,
into a private school. Again, maybe it doesn't matter, but out of state, does that then give them a leg up? Because they're no longer going to a California school, which is where I am, but they're going to a school in Austin.
it really depends on the school. I mean, schools in Boston, if we're talking about the most selective schools in Boston, they're not hurting for students. So, you know, that is probably not going to be a huge factor for them. But certainly in the Midwest, where everyone likes to fly over, I'm from the Midwest. I'm like, wait, there are great schools there. Every year I struggle with a student. I'm like, look, Grinnell is the place for you. It is a great fit. And they're like, yeah, but I want to go to wherever. They get hundreds of thousands of dollars in merit scholarships from these Midwestern schools, simply because they're a strong student that school usually cannot lock down. Right. So if the thing you're solving for here is the financial, you've got to think about a broader school list, because you're not going to get merit aid from the most selective schools. They don't give it. They don't need to. Merit aid is a tool to attract students, right? You're going to get it.
That was a bad example. You're right. When people
Yeah.
say school in Boston, they think something else. Let's pick like, I don't know, Alabama.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Like sending your kid to University of Alabama when you live in California. Is that going to be sort of, work in their favor?
Yeah, it certainly does. Big, state university systems love out-of-state students. There's actually some really sort of shocking research on how much out-of-state students are prioritized in the admissions process at those public universities, because they need tuition dollars. So that does help. That absolutely does help. Oh, we got another question in the chat. Let's see. Oh, Grinnell. Okay, great. We've got a Grinnell alum in the in the group. All right, let's keep going here. I wanted to show you how to read a mission statement. So I just grabbed Georgetown's and Columbia's. Now they are looking at the same sort of caliber of student, right? They're obviously in different places. Both are in cities, but New York is obviously different than DC. And Georgetown has a Jesuit background and Columbia is non-denominational. And just looking at their mission statement, you can see what they prioritize, the kinds of student that they want to attract, right? Georgetown's wants people who are really comfortable in this sort of diverse environment where everybody has a commitment to justice and the common good. They mentioned social justice again, respect for people's individual needs and talents, right? That's what they're selecting for. They want to see these kinds of character traits in the students that are applying, on top of the academic excellence and extracurricular involvement, all of these things, right? So if Georgetown is a school that your student thinks they might want to go to, validate that to make sure Georgetown has the programs your student is interested in, but also that they share values here, because they're going to go to the school and everybody's going to feel this way. And if they don't, that's going to affect their ability to engage on that campus, right? Their ability to be successful there. Columbia, research, learning at the highest level, right? We understand what their priority is here, right? Teaching makes it in here, but not as much as research does, right? So, neither of these is good or bad. They're just different. And so really talented students are going to have different goals, and different colleges are going to meet those goals in different ways, right? But definitely look at what their mission statement says, what they say their values are, what their academic philosophy seems to be, right? Columbia has a pretty rigid core curriculum, whereas Brown or Grinnell, if we go back to Grinnell, has an open curriculum, right? You do your major, but then you can do whatever you want outside of that, right? So it leads to this sort of like academic curiosity, and the things don't have to be related, but of course people find ways to relate them, and then they get really innovative, and who knows what comes out of it. Whereas Columbia, everybody sort of marches through the same kind of classes, they all speak the same language. There's interdisciplinary study, but it's in a different sort of setup, right? And those kinds of things can help your student distinguish whether they're a better fit for that school or that school. Once you have built your initial list and really understood what's a fit, what's not a fit, your goal is to narrow it to less than 15. Right. When I applied to college, probably when many of you were applying to college, we didn't really apply to more than like 5 or 6. Now you hear students applying to 20, 25, my God, 50. There's always a news story every year that somebody's applied to that many schools. And it's really intense. And colleges are also trying to make sure that only students who are truly interested in them are applying. So they put up these barriers, right? As accessible as they want to be, they don't want to be accessible to everybody still. And so they have all these supplemental essays, or they might require a test. And the more colleges you apply to, the more spread thin you're going to be. So 15 is a number I'm comfortable with my students. We usually find good overlap. If they've built their college list right, the values are all there. The only difference among them are the selectivity levels of each of these colleges. They're all a fit. And, we filtered out as we go, and we've identified, okay, this one feels like it's worth a visit, or it's worth me spending some time on YouTube and watching a recorded information session, or setting up a conversation with a current student to really get clear on if this is a fit or not. And at the end of the day, they end up with 1 or 2 likelies. Some people call these safeties, but you really want to make sure they are truly safe. Like, there is no chance your student is not getting in. I had a family the other year or 2 ago who was like, oh, NYU is our safety. NYU is not safety for anybody. So really understand what safe means. 7 to 10 target schools. These are schools where your students' GPA and test scores are right in the average range, and their kind of involvement is very similar to what other students are involved with on that campus. They're going to fit right in. And then 2 to 3 reach schools, right? I see a lot of people swapping that 7 to 10 reaches and 2 to 3 targets, but you want to think about this. I mean, literally it's an investment portfolio, right? They're investing a lot of time, and you're going to pay some application fees. You want to put your money not all in one basket and not all in the risky stuff, right? So diversify this portfolio. And every one of these should be a school that your student would be happy to go to and could study what they want to study and do what they want to do there, be around people that are going to inspire them. But the difference is, how selective are they, right? What's the acceptance rate? And then you can use your list to inform your strategy. I showed this a little bit with the spreadsheet, but once you've got your list, you can understand, okay, Georgetown really prioritizes social justice. I'm into that because that's why I thought Georgetown was a fit. But what can I do to really push that on, push my engagement there? Demonstrate to them that this is one of my core values. Of course, in an authentic way. You don't want to just go around doing things willy-nilly or completely faking it. But where can you move the needle a little bit to really show them that you are a values fit for this college? Or whatever the institutional priority seems to be. What stories can you tell them about those things? So you can start brainstorming essays. And if you don't have a story about that thing yet that you feel is good, and of course, students are not really great judges of this because they think they have nothing to say. So you as a parent might be able to help them, or somebody else who is in their life, an older adult sort of mentor type person can help them see what's special about them. But start thinking about the stories that resonate. And then you can actually build a timeline based on early decision, early action, early decision to deadlines, which I know we didn't talk about, but it is a big part of the strategy of your college list. Early applications have higher acceptance rate. And so if it's possible for your student that, they're going to have all this stuff done, they have done the research, they have their test scores, their grades are in a good place, they have the time to write the essays. Applying early is always a good idea. But that's something that you should probably talk to an expert about, your high school counselor or someone like me. But you can use that list to, fill in the deadlines and prioritize the schools that you're going to work down. So it ends up being, a task list as well in priority order.
Sheila,
Please.
I've been out of this thinking about college game for about 15 years now.
Yes.
So I'm a grandmother, not the mother. But what can you remind me what these deadlines typically are?
Yeah, of course.
Because
Yeah.
my grandson's in the 11th grade, and I'm starting to think that we're behind the 8 ball here.
You are not. No. You're not. You're probably.
Oh, okay.
This is why we're doing this now. Most people start thinking about their college list in July or August, and that feels too late to me. You've got way too much work to do.
Into their senior year?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I like building the list in spring of junior year. So you're right on time.
Okay.
So early deadlines are usually November 1st or November 15th. And then regular deadlines are usually like January 1st. Sometimes it's January 5th, whatever the first school day back is in the new year.
Okay.
There are some deadlines that will be January 15th even. Right. But all of that is in sort of winter of senior year.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Good question, though. Very good question. Anything else? Maybe we can pause here.
So for ED, like there are so many versions of early applications.
There are, yeah.
And I'm wondering if you have a cheat sheet. Because it seems to be like there are some colleges where if you apply, you pretty much can apply anywhere else. Like you have to accept if you get there. You can't even apply to other early programs.
Yes.
So how do we deconflict?
Yeah, it's a game of Tetris. It's like a LSAT logic puzzle, if you've ever done the LSAT. Early decision is binding. So you can only do ED to one school. You can do EA to as many schools as you want because it's not binding. So they don't restrict you. So you could do one ED and then several other EAs. Unless your school has something that's called restricted early action or single choice early action, which is what Harvard and Stanford have. So there you can apply early action. It's not binding, but you have to sign an agreement that you're not going to apply early anywhere else unless it's a public university. They'll allow you to apply early action to public universities, right? And then early decision 2 happens in the January deadlines. So you will know from your ED school whether you got in or not, so you can file another early decision. So that one is sort of like a backup, but then you go through the process again of like figuring out, okay, where can I ED, where can I not? And not every school has all of these. Some of them have only early action or only early decision. Some of them have all, like University of Chicago has all of the possible permutations of this. So you really have to pay attention to what programs are offered by each college and then figure out that puzzle. It's hard. Yeah, it's very difficult. Other questions here? Okay, how many of you are feeling like, okay, now I know what we need to do and I'm good? Nobody.
I know more than I knew 30 minutes ago.
Yes. Well, what I mostly hear is they're gonna be like, oh God, there's gonna be so many eye rolls. They're gonna be like, whatever, I don't want to talk to you about this. Mom, please. Right. So just because you know what needs to be done does not mean your kid is going to go along with you on this journey or listen to you, right? You're welcome to, I'll send you this recording. You're welcome to share this recording with them. I just know how this goes. I mean, I remember what I was like when I was a teenager. I don't want my parents to have anything to do with this. But at the same time, you can't leave this to the last minute. As you can see, there's a lot of thought that needs to go into this. You can't just decide in a day, the 15 colleges that you're going to go to. And so you need to start early enough to leave time for the list building process and the application process. And at the same time, you've got precious little time left with these kids in your home. You don't want to strain the relationship and force them to do something, right? That again is not going to yield good results, not just because it's going to damage your relationship, but they're just going to go through the motions and they won't really be thinking about what's actually good for me. Right. So my solution is have them work with me. I want to work with everybody's kids. I understand that's not something that everybody can do or wants to do, but there are places that, are available to help your kids, right? There are a lot of community-based organizations. Your high school has a college counselor that can help with this process quite a bit. And then I have, my company does one-on-one services. And then I've got a college list builder lab that we are starting March 21st. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. It's 4 75-minute sessions with me, with a carefully crafted group of students. So we are going to select students who do not go to the same high schools, do not live in the same area of the country, are not even interested in the same kind of fields. Because as we've worked to develop this with students, like they want to do this, but they're really worried about their competition. And they are not going to feel comfortable if somebody in the room feels like their competition, right? So carefully crafted cohort. There will be one-on-one time with me, and we're going to provide all the tools, the accountability, and the insight to help them craft a list that's right for them. Right. And I'll send you this afterwards. The pricing is $4.99 for 4 weeks. And my hourly rate is $5.50. So this is less than 1 hour with me. But it's sort of like a package deal that I can guarantee you will have a college list and you will have a kid who is ready to engage in this process afterwards if you go through this program with me. So I'll leave it there. And I will share all of this stuff in a follow-up email.